Let's get started. This is the Barber
Get
Biz
it.
podcast. So first off, state your name, who you are, your Instagram name, and where you are currently in your career of barbering.
All right. I'm Phil. I'm from Tucson, Arizona. And my Instagram handle is at barberphil15. And currently, where I'm at in my career is I'm a full time educator and full time content creator, part time barber.
Nice, nice. And so you shop owner? I see
No,
you
not
doing.
anymore.
Okay,
I recently sold my shops this past year
okay.
and I went full time education. I'm taking 2 flights a month, leaving the state. I'm doing classes every week. I was supposed to do 3 a month. I told myself I was going to do 3 a month, but ends up being 4. Yeah, and
That's a
so
lot of work, man.
I've been blessed, man. I never in my life would have thought I'd be able to build a platform, especially with not a lot of companies. I've never really had a company backing me. It's just based off of myself.
Absolutely. So let's go back. So now there's where you are. Let's go back a little bit to the
Okay.
beginning. So who was your first victim? The first person's hair you cut. I've heard all the stories. It was my mom's dog. I heard it was myself. I've heard it was my little brother. I heard it was in the bathroom at school. I brought a pair of clippers to school, lined up my homie. So I've heard also, I'm really interested to know the first time that clipper was vibrating in your hand and you were taking it to somebody's head. Who was it? Where were you? What was it? Do you remember that?
Yeah, my first client was my brother. I got 3 older brothers.
Okay.
They all grew up gangster cholo. They shaved their head bald. I don't know if I'm Mexican to say cholo, but I don't know. Uh, cholos and they shaved their head and they didn't really care. And so one day I was just like, yo, let me try to do a fade. And if they liked it, they kept it. If not, they just shaved it bald. And so they shaved it bald for a long period of time before they actually started keeping the fades. But that's how I got my start, man.
Nice. So you would just practice on them. You would do the fade, and then good, bad, or indifferent, you just shave it all off anyway.
Yep. And then by the time I got to high school, I had my homies coming over to my house after school and I was doing like the $5 haircuts. And then I graduated high school and I already had full clientele of friends from school and stuff and family friends. And my dad had asked me if I was working at Discount Tire at the time. That's like the only paycheck job I've ever had in my life. And he asked me if I wanted to keep busting tires, if I wanted to do this barber thing. And I chose the barber thing because I definitely didn't want to be in the heat, sweating my ass off. And so I chose that route. And
And
I've
so,
been,
what did that look like? Did that look like going to a shop to cut hair? Was it going to school or becoming an apprentice? What was that next step in your journey from cutting your brothers, cutting
yeah,
friends in high school, creating a clientele, and then making that next step?
I was building clientele early. Like I still have some clients that I've been cutting since I was like 13 because I started
Wow.
cutting hair. And as soon as I finished high school, my aunt, I was living at with her house at the time. She's like my godmother. And she was talking to a girl that she worked with, and she says, "My husband just opened up a barber shop. If you know anybody that needs haircuts, you let me know." My nephew's a barber. Like he always has hair all over my kitchen from cutting hair all day. And she's talk have him talk to my husband, and I'll give him a job. And he'll give him a job. And she's like, he hasn't gone to school yet. He's still in high school. So no, maybe they could work something out. So I was fortunate enough to be able to work there for 2 years before I even went to barber school. And I don't even deny it. Most barbers nowadays don't even have licenses. So
Yeah.
and back then it was like the secret that I didn't tell nobody. Now I'm just like, yo, like it's cool. But I didn't go to school till I was about 20. And so I've been working in a barbershop since I was 18. And once I graduated high school, I worked in a real, like a full time barbershop because the shop that I was working at when I was younger wasn't what most people would like to work at. And I actually got evicted from working there. And that's what encouraged me to go to school.
Tell me
And
about that. So you got evicted. What do you mean? You were working, the L&I came in. What happened?
we showed up to work one day and the door had a big old chain link on it and evicted. We lost our clippers
Wow.
and I was,
But why was it the landlord situation? Do you remember? Do you know,
yeah,
looking back now, what happened?
the owner wasn't paying the rent and he was pocketing. And it sucks,
Yeah.
bro. I've dealt with it a lot. It's
Bro,
probably
that ain't the first. That ain't the first time I heard that story, though.
That's actually
Seems
it happened to me twice.
wow.
I saw it a lot because I heard it through my whole career of people that had some money and they want to invest in you, and then they realize like barbershops ain't a cash cow. So then they lose that hard on it, and they lose that drive that they had the first year. And so yeah, I really didn't have many options. I didn't even have clippers. And so I signed up for barber school.
Your clippers were stuck inside.
Yep.
And did you try to get your clippers out?
I think some of the guys did. I just took the
Yeah.
L. I had already, by the time they figured that whole situation out, I had already started school. The owner hooked me up. My family had already hooked me up with some clippers. And so I was already in school, just doing the right thing. And as soon as I got out of school, I've been working in the shop now. It's been over like 15 years in the shop.
Wow. So tell me about your experience with school, because people talk about doing an apprenticeship, maybe going to barber school,
Yeah,
and then you had years of experience already as a barber. So you already a cutter before you became a barber. So talk to
yeah.
me about that transition from being a full time, already making money in this, and then having to go to school and kind of, was it take a few steps back, or was there things you learned that you didn't already know? Tell me about your experience in school.
Yeah, so when I went to school, like I already had full clientele, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I didn't go to school very much. I signed up and I tried to do the full-time school, and I needed money, and I was
Right.
like I said, like I think that's the only downside to working in a shop before school is you
Yeah.
get money, and so then it's hard to let it go for that amount of time. So I was doing part-time school, part-time barbershop at another shop, and finally, the teacher got on to me and just said, "Yo, if you don't come, like it's gonna take you like 2.5 years to graduate. It's like people are out of here like in 6 months." And so I finally
How
was
many hours was it? How many hours of
doing
school?
like 10 hours a week, bro. Like I was going like
Wow.
1 or 2 days,
And how much did you need?
1,500 hours.
1,500. Wow. You were doing 10 hours a week.
Yeah, he's
You're
like,
going to be
it's
there for a long time.
you're like a full timer, bro. You're gonna be here
Yeah.
forever. And so I
Yeah.
finally listened, and I dropped the barber shop where I was working at and just started going to school full time. And it was tough, right? I'm gonna lie. Like, I always tell people like that was probably the brokest I've ever been in my life. I was negative in my bank account. I didn't have tags on my car. I didn't have insurance. I didn't even have a license. I would just try to make it home before the sun went down so I could see if there was a cop behind me. So it was rough, bro. It was ramen noodles and hot
I
pocket.
hear.
And I'm glad I went
Absolutely.
with that. It made me appreciate life a little bit more and maybe appreciate money more.
Listen,
But
but ain't it true though? Struggle is a part of life. People are trying to dodge trouble and look for success to find happiness in their success, not realizing that like struggle is a part of it. Struggle, you got to embrace it, because if you don't, you'll just be running from struggle all your life trying to be happy, and that never works.
yeah, struggles are lessons. And I always tell people that too, because I lived on my own since I was about 15. I wanted to be a knucklehead and party and chase girls. And my mom said, "You want to go be grown? Go be grown on your own." And me and my cousin got an apartment. We were paying, I was working at discounts, so I was making some money to do that. But I remember being so poor, bro. Like I would walk to Circle K and just like a gas station and just get Hot Pockets because I didn't have any money. And so I always tell myself like my work ethic comes from that. And it wasn't like my parents were really bad, like I couldn't go
Yeah,
home.
yeah.
I didn't want to go home. Like I wanted to
Hmm.
prove to my parents that I could be grown and do my
Right,
own.
right.
So I think that's where my work ethic comes is from having no options. Like I just saw like I don't have an option. Like I got to make this work because I'm trying to go back to my parents' house and then be
Nah,
like,
because I like that, because it's like they have that conversation like with entrepreneurs. Some people work all the time to get the perfect plane before they take off, and some people jump off the cliff and build the plane on the way down. You know what I mean? And hopefully, before they hit the ground, they start flying a little bit. You know what I
yep,
mean? You're the latter of the two.
yeah. And so that's where the work ethic came and the drive and the determination. And I lived my life for a long time of trying to prove myself to people. If somebody doubted me, I was going to prove them wrong. And so that kind of stemmed from my childhood, bro. And it's really actually helped me to overcome a lot in my career and to accomplish a lot.
And how did that affect? And how did it affect your clientele being in school and making that transition from going part time to going full time? Did you lose clientele? Did you gain them back? Take me through that, kind of like
Uh,
the end period of your schooling.
no, I didn't really lose clientele. So I think haircuts were $5. And I was already charging 20, 25, which back then was unheard of because haircuts were like $10 back then. And so I would give the teacher five and I would pocket 15. So I would make
So
enough
you
money.
just had your clients meet you at school.
Yeah, they would just come to school. Nobody ever complained. I'm like I couldn't proudly say I've as a barber, I'm really good with people. I really know how to communicate with people. And I've always done that. Like when I teach my like barberpreneurship courses and helping barbers build clientele and stuff like that, I always tell them like communication is key. I've always had relationships with my clients. Like no client would ever show up to the barbershop looking for me because they already know they have to have an appointment. They already know to at least contact me. Like you don't just show up. And so I've always been able to retain clients very well because I'm always in constant communication with them.
No, that's amazing. So now take me to that moment. You graduate, you get your certificate, you're a barber now, you gotta take state board tests, and now do you go back to the barbershop you were already in? Did you never leave it? What was the next step after school? Or did you think I'm a barber now, I could go to a different shop, or how
Yeah,
did that work?
I went to a new shop. It was a pretty well-known shop. The owner was, they were really good barbers, and there was a lot of good barbers that worked there. And I really wanted to be able to learn from them. And then my dad's a pastor, so this dude was a Christian. So my dad was all for it. Like, oh, he's a Christian barbershop. You got to go over there. And
Yeah.
so I went over there, and there was its ups and downs. The upsides to it was we didn't take appointments back then. Like he wasn't for it. And so that kind of walk-in style
When you
barbershop,
say back then, Brown, what year was that?
like 2010, 2010,
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, 2010. And I think there was appointments, but it was they were still stuck like in 2000. And
They
because
had
the
a
owner,
little piece of paper. They
yeah,
write their name on the paper,
sign in
and you come
sheet,
up and you cross it out,
yeah, sign
things
in
like
sheet,
that.
and they were stuck in their ways. But I'm glad I went through that because it taught me how to hustle. It taught me how to cut fast because there's nothing worse than seeing 10 people waiting for you at one time. And then they taught me like you come in early. Like those guys were coming in at 6 in the morning. And I'd be like, yo, why are you coming at 6? Yo, I already made $300 and you just got here. I'm just like, fair enough. All right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You
I'm
got
down.
that.
And so they taught me how to come in early, and they taught me like if the shop closes at 7, we stop accepting people at 7. And then so I'm like, all right, cool. So then it's 7:05 and somebody walks in and they're mad at me for not accepting somebody. They're like, why are you not accepting clients? You just started cutting hair. It just like mentally made me strong to work around. It was like a super like typical male egotistical barbershop. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like you just
That,
a
and
lot
but
of,
I want to talk a little bit about the marketing and what you're doing now in 2023. But
yeah.
back in 2010, 2011, what did marketing look like at that time? How did you gain new customers, or was it that the shop just had walk-ins all the time and there was no need for it?
I think I started Instagram after I left that shop. When did Instagram start? Like
About
2008?
2012.
Okay, yeah. So
2012.
it was before Instagram for sure. Then it was like 2020. A lot of it was referrals, walk-ins, and if we were slow, he'd be like, "What are you sitting around for? Go out and hand out flyers." So then we had to go hand out flyers, like super
Right,
old.
right.
Like old school. He
Now,
was,
did you actually print flyers, or did you have like a piece of
yep.
paper? Or did y'all
He
get
would,
card like
oh,
club flyers?
he would give us a flyer, and we'd go to Office Max and print out. And he would ask, "How many you print out? I better not see those when you get back." I'm just like, damn, like super old school, bro. And I think what helped me retain a lot of clients there, though, was the fact that those guys were going in at 6 in the morning. That was their loophole because he was very against appointments.
Mm-hmm.
So we would get appointments from 6 to 9 when the shop opened. And so 6 in the morning, we'd start scheduling, and that was how I was able to retain a lot of clients because I was getting those people in consistently. And
Now
so,
that sounds crazy. I did a post one time where this guy said, "Damn, 9 in the morning though," and I was he was almost like he was a barber saying, "Who's at the shop at 9?" Why is it? Tell me, what did you learn about the type of clientele that you're getting between 6 and 9, six
uh,
a.m. to 9 a.m.?
it's crazy because those clientele were people with money, man, the people that had shit to do. They're not trying to chill and wake up, and they've been up since 4. And like I remember one of the guys I work with, he cut like a football coach. He cut like guys that had got a crazy schedule, and that's how we pitched him. Was like there was nothing worse than 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and everybody's rushing in the door because everybody got off of work. So I would just tell them like, "Yo, like what time do you usually go to work?" Oh, 8 or 9. I was like, "Why don't you come before work?" Well, I go in at
Right,
6,
right.
bro. Like it got to the point where one dude saw that we were all doing that. He started coming in at 4. And I would get there at one time. I got there at 5, just like I thought I was like doing some shit that nobody else was doing. And I get there and I'm like, yo, what are you doing here already? 'Cause I've already done 2 haircuts today. And I'm like, yo, this dude is on one, bro. So
Bro,
like,
let me tell you something. I've been to shops where it's 12:42 in the afternoon on a Saturday, and people are walking in with a sandwich saying, "Y'all chill. I just got here. Let me eat my sandwich. I'll
Oh
be
man,
with you in a minute." Talk
yeah,
to
man.
me about that, like that hustle between the barber that thinks they can come in when they want and the barber that's waking up early. Talk to me about the contrast between them.
So for me, it's like you can't expect to beat the competition if you're not willing to do what the competition won't. And so for me, like even that guy that came in at 4, he was like, okay,
Mm,
this is coming at 6, now I'm gonna come in at 4. And
mm,
as many things as that shop taught me not to do, there was so many things that it taught me to do where it's like, for instance, like when I had my shops, most shops are open Tuesday through Saturday. And for me, I'm like, yo, like, no, we're gonna be open 7 days a week. Our busiest days for walk-ins are Sundays and Mondays because everybody
mm.
else. And so
Okay.
anytime I would hire a new barber, I would force them to work Sunday. Your starting schedule is Sunday, Mondays. You got to work. This is when we get the most walk-ins, and this is when you got to be here. And so things like that, we're just trying to get that competitive edge, just trying to think outside the box and do something that somebody else isn't doing.
And when did you make that transition from being at the Christian barbershop right out of barber school? What made you make the transition to a shop? Did you go to a different shop first and then get your own shop or go right
Yeah.
into your own?
No, so I ended up being a knucklehead and I like to party and even bro, even I was still coming at 6 a.m., but there was times where I would sleep in my chair for an hour and then cut hair.
Right,
And
right.
know, that eventually catches up to you. As much as people want to brag about doing that, like caught up to me and I got into it with the owner and he fired me for being late and for being a knucklehead or oversleeping because I was too drunk the night before. Because think about it, in 2020, 2021, or 2010, 2011, I was 21 years old. Remember, that was my prime. That was
Yeah,
when I was
yeah.
that like I was legal. And so everybody's got to go through that. You got to go through your
Right.
part. And I remember this forever and I'll never forget because I ended up going to another side of town from where I was at and the owner told me, like, you'll never be successful without this shop. I was like, cool. And I think that's that whole dog in me that wants to prove people wrong. I spent
Yeah.
about 3 years of my career after that, like showing this dude, nah, bro, I'm gonna be successful wherever I go. And so I left that shop and went across town to another shop where I went to barber school with a few of the guys and they opened up their own shop. So they were trying for a long time. So I had it like in the back of my mind. If I ever needed
Yeah.
a job, this is where I'm gonna go. So as soon as
Yeah,
I needed
yeah.
a job, I called him. He actually fired somebody for me to be there. And it was a crazy story because I didn't know the guy that he fired, but he's like, yeah, you'll be here. And his stuff was still there. So I showed up to work and his stuff was still there. I'm like, yo, this is weird. And the guy walks into work and didn't even know he was fired. And he sees me cutting at his station, and I'm just like, yo, like this dude's gonna fight me, or this is gonna be awkward. So they call him to the back and they fire him. And like he stood next to me, like packing his stuff. It was just bad. It was all bad. It was yeah. Ended up firing the dude. He's like, oh, I wanted to get rid of this dude a long time ago. Anyways, don't worry about it. I'm like,
Uh,
all right.
yeah.
And it was cool because that was a polar opposite. I was used to a lot of structure. I was used to
Mm.
like be on time, had to greet the clients. Like I said, like even though me and the owner got into it, and he taught me a lot. He taught me about customer service. He taught me about work ethic. They taught me how to be a hustler.
Hand out flyers, go to
Yeah.
Office Max, get them copies.
Yeah. So then I go to this shop and keep in mind that there's a lot of really good barbers, but we all know that there's so many really good barbers with terrible work ethic and terrible customer service. And so that was the shop that I went to. And when I moved, I lost about half of my clients. I really did because
Mm.
it was about 30 minutes away. Like it was a distance. And then
Yeah.
in my city, 30 minutes is far. Like everything's 10 minutes away around here. And so I lost about half my clients. And when I got there, it was the kind of shop that people showed up at 12. It was the kind of shop that people did their own thing and everybody was self employed. And so within 6 months, I was the busiest barber in there. And keep in mind, that's why I said there was so many good barbers because there's dudes that were like OGs. Like you got those barbers that you look up to as a kid that are in the game for 10, 20 years before you. Those barbers were there and guys that were like super good with designs. Like it was just a really good shop of barbers cutting wise. And so if they would come in, I was like, yo, is so and so here? I'm like, nah, he's not in today because I would come in at 6, right? Is he here? I was like, nah, I don't know. What time you come in? I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't make his schedule. There's no structure here. You don't know anybody's
Yeah.
schedule. And so eventually the clients just got tired of it and they started going to me because I was always
Yeah.
available. I worked
Yep.
7 days a week. I didn't take any days off. And it wasn't until probably I had my first son that I really started to take some days off and stuff like that. But I've always
Yeah.
worked days a week, man.
We're now around 2015. You're at a shop, and you
Yeah.
mentioned that you owned your shop at some point. What drove you to make that transition to becoming an owner?
Okay. So the way it worked was the guys that I worked with there, second shop. I got there and we were cutting hair one day. I was there for about almost a year. And the landlord walked in with the locksmith and told us we had 30 minutes to leave. And so I was like, damn. All right. So that owner got evicted. And so at that point, I had no job. And so I literally got the first.
If a barber was listening to this story and be like, yo,
Yeah.
this is like the third story I heard. Is there anything a barber could do to protect themselves from working at a shop and the owner not paying their rent? Is there any way to save from that? What would you recommend?
I could say, damn,
And then you could do.
I could say you can sue him, but if the dude can't even pay his rent, what are you going to sue him for, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just tough. And it sucks because we kind of knew it. Like there was times that they'd come and put the sticker for not paying electricity on the window. Ah, bro. And so he got evicted.
The signs is there, literally and
Yeah.
figuratively.
And he'd party on the weekends, bro. And we just knew like he was living a lifestyle that he couldn't afford.
Wow. I guess in some ways, I'm trying to think of it like network, make sure you know other barbers and other owners and other people that if the time ever came, you can make that shift, make that adjustment when the
Exactly.
timing is
I
right.
think,
You know
yeah,
what
I
I
think
mean?
best advice. Yeah, that's what I did. I called my childhood barbershop. This is an OG shop. This is where I got my haircut in high school. Like I called that owner. I knew him and he used to cut my hair. And so he gave me a job. And honestly, I only lasted there like 6 months because I was charging like 25, 30. They were charging 10 and 12 still. And so my income was cut in half. And I think I'll openly admit it, bro. Like I had almost enough money to open up my own shop saved. But at the time, my ex-wife was pregnant with my son. And so she wasn't working. And so I had to pay bills. And like you get used to making a certain amount. So it was hard
Right.
for me just to making half that. And so once I did that, I was working there for a while. And some of the guys that worked there, they opened up a shop, right? And they had asked me to go there, and I was like, nah. It was even farther than the other shop, like more distance from me. I was like, no, bro. Like I still have like north side clients. You guys are going like deep south. I'll just stay here. So then they called me another year later, and they had 3 shops now. And so they said, yo, like we're opening up another shop at where the shop was where we got evicted from. It was called like Fine Line. We're gonna go open up there again, the old shop. I was like, okay. They're like, we want you to be the manager. And I was like, all right, okay. Like I've never managed a shop before. What are your expectations of me? What do you
Mm-hmm.
want? And they're like, I've never done that. And they're like, no, like we know the way you are. We know how you carry yourself. We know that you do it. Like I know you. And I've always sat in the first chair at every barbershop that I worked at because I wanted people to see me. And I always greeted clients. So they knew I had good habits.
Customer service and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I said, okay, what are your expectations of me? But they're like, we have 8 chairs. By the end of the year, just try to fill the chairs. That's cool. I was like, all right. And so by the end of the year, I gave them 11 chairs.
How did you do that?
That was when we started going real hard on social media. We had a waiting list to work with us. I pissed off so many people because barbers were leaving shops because they wanted to come work with us. And owners were saying that we were recruiting their clients. I'm like, yo, they're coming to me. I'm not like
Yeah,
sliding.
yeah.
I was like, they hit my DM. And I'm like, oh, like, don't come work here. Your boss is going to get mad at me. What do you
Right.
want me to do? And so I did that. And they had 3 shops, remember? So the second shop was on west side of town. And they're like, yo, I walked in there one day and I remember one of the owners was like, yo, he called me big time. What's up, big time? I heard you're the man around here. And I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. And he's, what do I got to get you to do to come manage this shop for us? And so I was like, it's got to be better than what I have now. And like, well,
Right.
we're paying you. And I was like, well, I don't pay booth rent. That's my manager pay. I was like, all right. He's like, how about this? Why don't I pay you a salary on top of not paying booth rent? Like, I'm cool with that. I went over there. Once I got the shop profitable, then I started getting paid. So he's like, work with me. Get the
Yeah.
shop money, revenue in here. Once we get in the black, we'll pay you. So once I did that, I was getting paid like $500 a week on top of whatever I made cutting hair.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was
And
dope.
not paying booth rent.
Yeah, and not paying booth rent. So all the money I was making was going to me, and I was just getting paid a salary. And then one day they hit me again. They're like, "Yo, like we got the suite next to the shop that you're running on the west side. We're gonna knock the wall down and we're gonna make it like a super shop." I was like, "Okay," because I did it again. Like when I went there, there was only 2 barbers working there, bro. It was like a ghost town. It was very sad and depressing in there. It was really dark and dingy. Like it was bad. We had 7 chairs. By the end of the year, we had 9.
Wow.
And we didn't even have 9 chairs. I had 9 barbers with 7 chairs. I would rotate people out. I wouldn't even get. I
What
gave
is going on? What was your secret sauce? Like, what was it? Was it how you vetted the barbers? What did you do that you think was different? Was it
um
only social media?
yeah. So I can say social media was most of it.
But social media is about awareness, though. So they're
Yeah, yeah.
aware of you.
Always brought
You can
awareness.
still fumble the ball afterwards, for
Yeah.
sure.
So awareness of what we were doing. I did something in the city that nobody's ever done. And what I mean by that is creating like a culture of family, creating a culture of education. So that's honestly how I got my platform to educate was I started educating my barbers first and like I would film it and post it and then people started hitting me up for classes and I was like, "Okay, cool." And so I'd always educate my barbers. So that was the culture of my business, like you go there to learn. And that's one thing that I learned because I literally just came from a meeting right now with these gentlemen that wanted to open up a shop and they were asking me advice. And I just told them, like, what are you selling? Like, I told them as a barber, and you're looking at an owner, why would they go work there? I told them, why would they want to work for you? Is that we won't charge high rent. And I said, okay, but then like, the thing I don't like about that is like for haircuts. If I started charging cheap haircuts and then I want to raise my prices, they're gonna want the cheap haircut because that's how you brought them in. They're gonna want to stay there. I go,
Right.
so if you bring barbers in on low booth rent, when it's time to raise the booth rent, they're gonna say and dip out. And they're like, smart. So I never sold barbers on cheap rent. I always told them the rent was high because I knew that I provided a lot for them. And two, I told them this isn't, I never sold them on money either. Like a lot of owners like to say, oh, you come here, we're busy, bro. We got a lot of walk-ins. I would never even mention that at all, like how busy we were. And they would say, like, well, do you guys get a lot of walk-ins? How busy is it? Well, that depends on you. That ain't on me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not my job to provide you business. You need to get your own. And so the biggest thing was just growth and education. I would sell them on education. We did classes every Monday. I would do classes and do a different haircut. I'd bring people in. We'd bring people over Zoom. We'd fly people out to do classes. And it just built the culture of growth.
So if I go to one of Barber Phil's shops, I'm gonna go in at level 3, and by the time I spend a year or two there, I'm gonna be at level 7, level 8. Like I'm gonna elevate my skill set or my marketability or whatever the case may be.
Anything. And that's what I hired them to. When I interview people, would be like, okay, like, why do you want to work here? And they would give me a whole list of why they wanted me to teach them. And
What was the normal thing people would say when you say,
then
"Why do you want to work here?"
sheer work because I had a reputation of nobody styled hair, nobody know how to use scissors in my city, and not that I'm the best. Like
Right, right.
it's one of my most booked
No,
classes.
no, but that's where social media comes in.
Yes,
There could be 30 people that's better than you. Just nobody knows it because they're not on social media.
that,
And because
that-
you're doing it on social media, people know about it. They can share the video. Now people are just aware of what your skill set is. That's why it's so important.
yeah. So it was sheer work, always sheer work, styling hair, social media. They wanted to be big on Instagram. And the biggest thing was they just were attracted to the culture, like the groups. Like you said, I always made it a point to show family culture. Like once a quarter, I take them to go to golf and stuff, or we'd go having pool parties. Like we'd always do shop outings. And people, they want to be a part of that. Cause honestly, at the end of the day, people just want to be a part of something. And that's why I always tell people, like, that's why people join gangs is they just want to feel wanted. And so it made people feel like they were a part of it and they felt wanted because they've worked at so many shops where they feel like the owner doesn't give a fuck about them.
That's true. And there is a investment from yourself that comes with that. Talk to me about the level of investment that you have to put in because what I hear most of the time is what you're saying is it's not my responsibility to get you customers. But on the flip side, if you're flying people out and doing education, you're giving your time, your money to fly someone out. You're investing at some point. Whether
Yes.
I'm getting a lot of walk-ins and not training you, or I'm training you and giving you my time, money, and effort. At some point, there has to be a level of investment. So, what kind of investment were you putting in, like as far as financially, things like
Uh,
that?
so that's where everything happened. It was right during COVID.
Mm.
So I was a manager then. And so
Right.
right before COVID, that was when they approached me about expanding the shop. They wanted it to be a super shop, big shop, right? And I just told him, I said, I talked to my wife at the time, and it's like, honestly, like my goal was to own my own shop by the time I was 30, and I was coming up on 29. And I
Mm.
said, as much as it sounds good, I said, oh, they said they're gonna open up the shop. I was like, who's gonna do that?
But
They're like,
wait a minute though. Why was your goal 30 and not 25?
because I do numbers and I knew what the shop made. And I told myself that $2,000 a month paycheck isn't gonna, it's guaranteed. There's no
Yeah.
liability on me. And so when they approached me with that, I said, when we're gonna expand the shop, I was like, who's gonna do that? And they're like, you are. And I was like,
Mm,
nah. I said, I had
mm,
talked to my ex-wife at the time and I said, that unless you guys plan to make me your partner, I can't do that.
mm.
So honestly, some of the owners didn't agree with it. And so we ended up parting ways with one of the owners. Me and him parted ways. And that's when it became the shop that I owned. And they ended up keeping the two other shops and we just kept one on the west side.
Okay.
And that we changed the name, we rebranded it, we changed it all up. And first year of ownership, COVID happened.
Mm,
And so at
damn.
that point, I was like 2 years in as running it. And at
Mm,
that point, I was a little burnt out because I was charging booth rent. I knew, yeah, I was getting paid, but I knew what I was putting out. And it was a lot of time. It wasn't
yeah,
even
yeah,
a lot of time.
yeah.
So I was honestly at the point during COVID where I just considered selling them. I'm just like, yo, like, I don't know if I could do this no more. I was getting hurt. Like, I would help barbers out, and a year later, I'm gonna go do my own thing. Or a year later,
Hmm.
F Phil. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
poured so much time into you and effort, and it was like a slap in my face. And so when we got back, I had a student reach out to me, a kid, it was just a kid. And he reached out to me and he said, yo, heard you do the apprenticeship program? And I'm like, no, like I've heard of it. As so and so said you did it. And the person that told him to do it was one of my mentors. And he
Mm,
does, but he's in another city. And so
mm.
he told him, yeah, he does it to make me want to do it. You never
Yeah, yeah,
lied and told the guy that I did it so the guy could pressure me
yeah.
to do it, telling me to do it for a long time. That kid reaching out to me and becoming an apprentice, it rejuvenated me. Like it made it fresh again. And if it wasn't for him reaching out to me, I probably would have sold shops. I was like, I'm done with this. And then I really changed my mindset from, and that's where I said I did a lot of things where people didn't do. A lot of shops, all shops are rental. All shops are rental. The only ones that weren't were like corporate style V's and corporate style businesses. There was no small business in town that did that. And so my mentor that told him about the apprenticeship program, he ran a commission barbershop. He broke down numbers for me. He told me I was doing it the wrong way, blah, blah, blah. And so I just grabbed my nuts and I did it. I went to a commission style barbershop and it honestly changed everything because the income we were bringing in was damn near doubled and tripled.
So talk to me about the difference between rental because you said earlier, hey, it's not my job to help you get customers. If you're
Yeah.
doing commission, are you helping them get customers?
So the thing is, I say it wasn't my job, but I still did it
Yeah. Okay.
because I showed you how to get clients. I promoted you on
Right,
social.
right.
Like even to this day, like if you look at my stories, I still promote guys that work for me because I still support them. You know what I mean? I've never been
Right.
that guy.
But there, yeah, but there, I think what you're saying is there's a difference between an obligation
Yes,
and a help. I can
I,
help you, but don't treat it as if it's the
my job.
obligation. Right. It's
Yes.
not my
So
job. I see what you're saying.
I made sure I drew the line in the sand right then and there, and so that their mentality wasn't that. And so
Yeah.
honestly, I was running a commission style business without the commission. I was doing everything that a commission business would do for you. I was providing you neck strips. I was providing you classes. I was doing all these things, and it just didn't make sense on paper. And so the ROI was finally better where now it made sense. You know what I mean? Now this is worth it. And so that's when we did that, and we opened up two shops, and it was ran successfully for a good amount of time, for almost 3 years. And then it came to the point too where my career blew up so much with social media, with education, with everything in my life. It just came down to the point to where I had to make that decision. You have to make sacrifices, and you have to pick and choose what you
Mhm.
put your feet in. And that's when I had to do it.
But it seems like you've always been that person. You've always been like building people up, moving, building people up. And you mentioned that you get the slap in the face, right?
Yeah.
Talk to me about that because me and Tyreek have talked about that. Tyreek, I hear a lot of his stories, and him being an owner, he runs into that a lot because
Yeah.
he's teaching people, building them up to a certain degree, and then they go. Just talk to
No.
me about that
Well,
transition and what have you learned from it?
yeah, back then it did hurt me, Once I went to commission, I had a different mentality because the way I explained it to them is when you leave, I got what I needed from you and you got what you needed from me. On a booth rental is you got what you needed and then you left. You know what I mean? On a commission scale is you made that sacrifice of giving 40% of your money or whatever the scale was. At that point, the ROI was worth it. You know what I mean? My investment in you was worth it. And we got what we needed and you got what you did. So I didn't take it personal. And then being more mature in business, I just eventually learned that there is no feelings in business. It's business. And I had to hear that from them. And I think the most common thing that I heard from barbers whenever they would leave was like, I'm just doing what's best for me and my family. And I was like, okay. So as a business owner, when you do what's best for you and your family, you're a piece of shit. And so I just stuck with me forever was like, because the fact that we were a commission scale, we were robbing people, whatever, there was no, bro, it just has to make sense.
Yeah. Yeah,
And so,
no, that's rough when you get to those moments. And that's why I was saying, like, what have you learned over time? Because initially you take it personally, right? Damn, they did me dirty. They left.
yeah.
They opened their own shop. They took the guys with them, things like that. But then over time, you learn like it comes full circle. If you had to help someone, if they're like, yo, Phil, right now I have this shop. I have five guys working for me. One of the guys opened up a shop. He took three of my barbers, left me with nobody. I'm not sure what to do. What would you say to encourage that barber, that owner?
So they just lost all their barbers.
So they trained up their barbers, and they have five or six barbers. One of them opens a shop and just does a revolt and takes everybody with them. What because this is a common practice. I've
Yeah.
talked to a lot of different barbers, and this happens. What do you say to that owner? Again, we're not talking to the barbers now, just from
Yeah.
owner to owner. Like, what do you say to encourage them through that process?
I just learned how to play the game. And what I mean by that was I was constantly recruiting. I always had people in mind. I learned how to catch energies. Like I could feel like like the one time that I had lost a barber and they took four of the barbers with them, I felt it coming. Like I was just very aware because it happened to me 3 or 4 times. So I just stopped taking it personal and I was always recruiting. And so literally, bro,
It's like having a backup quarterback.
not even on the level of, so it got to the point. First, it was like I would have my eyeballs on certain barbers, right? And that's, you see me tell it in my videos all the time. I always did classes at schools because I just posted it today. Like it was, oh no, I haven't even posted it. My bad. I haven't even posted it
Right,
yet. My
right.
bad. But I haven't posted it yet. But it says that I used free classes at schools as a recruiting, as a marketing for recruiting. And every time that I would do a class, they would DM us, yo, I want to work there whenever you graduate. And so I literally, we had a waiting list to work there. And so then it went from having a waiting list to where you can work part time. And then you had to come in and sit in on all the classes on Mondays. And you weren't able to start till you were up to par to where a lot of the other guys were. And so we had some barbers that would sit in the Monday classes for almost 6 months before they would even get a job. And so I was just always recruiting, man. And I learned again. That's what I tell owners. Like, it's just part of the
Yeah.
game. You got to play the
Yeah, and it keeps people on their toes. It keeps people on their toes. Always happen that help wanted sign because they know that. Listen, if you get hurt in the game, the backup quarterback may win the Super Bowl for us. You know what I
Yep.
mean? It's
And
happened.
that's exactly what it did. And I didn't like to throw it in their face, but
You're
there was
right.
once in a while you had to remind them. And
Yeah, yeah,
there's about 3 or 4 people sitting right next to you that would love to have your job. We
right.
want you here.
It's either that. Yeah, it's either that or stay in this position where they have all the leverage,
And
and it's
so
like one or the other.
that's where barbers don't understand. And I think the best advice that I can give barbers is stop thinking like a barber. And when I say barber, the way barbers think how they would feel or how, what they want. No, man, you need to think as a business owner. Like when you go to businesses, people get fired all the time. People get laid off all the time. And unless you worked in corporate America, you don't know how to fire people. And that was probably one of the hardest things to where I see a lot of owners struggle with firing people. And it's like you just had to. That's why it was hard too, because it's so hard as a business owner in a barbershop because you build relationships with them. Like you go to their house, they come to your house, their kids. So then when you have to let them go, it's so hurtful because you built a relationship with them. When you're in corporate America, you're just a number. Able to separate those two is really hard, bro. That was probably the hardest thing you deal with as a business owner. And then, bro, I've had to fire like my best friends. Like I've had to fire people that we were cool for years, and now they're like, oh, he's a piece of shit. But it's yo, like I had to tell one time. I remember I told the barber, and he was one of my really good friends, and he was showing up late all the time, right, and partying. And so I was like, yo, like low key, if you're my friend, it's almost more disrespectful to be this guy because you're my friend, and you're not only making me look bad, like you're making the business look bad. That's disrespectful as a friend. I go, so me firing you isn't even really disrespectful. What's disrespectful is that you don't even respect me and my business, and you call yourself my friend. And so it's tough,
That's
bro.
what
And
it is, and this I feel like too. Like some people haven't earned their opinion,
yes,
and what I mean by that is that some I hear a lot of people that are. There's been this debate about barber schools and people being
yeah,
upset. Oh, barber schools don't do this. Barber schools don't do that. And a lot of time I want to say, hey, hold your tongue until you are an owner of a barber school,
yeah,
because there's a lot of people who work at a shop and say, if I was the owner, I would do X, Y, and Z.
yep,
But you're not the owner, so that you haven't purchased that opinion yet.
yep,
When you'll purchase your opinion, when you own a shop, have barbers, train
hmm,
them up, and then that happens to you, you have now earned the right to speak your opinion. There's certain things, yeah, you can chime in whatever you want. Everybody has the right to free speech, but understand you haven't earned your opinion, because for someone even like Tariq, you own a barber school, bro. There's you can't really tell him too much about what barber schools should or shouldn't be doing. You can raise your hand and say what you want, but you haven't bought that opinion yet. And for most barbers, it's the same with owners. And if you're not, listen, I know kids that will say, they'll be 16, man, I don't want to, I want to be a barber, but I'm not going to do it because when I get old enough, I'll just pick it up. Like, I'll just pick up barbering. If
yeah.
barbering is, I don't know, what, there's nothing you could just pick up, but they treat it like, oh, I'm going to leave that on the back burner because whenever I feel like it, I'll just pick up the ball and become a barber, when that's not true at all. It's a very,
They
it's
treat
a
it.
skill set that you need to learn.
Problem is they treat it like a hobby, and they don't treat it like
Right.
business. And that's where that whole. That's why like I made a video the other day too, or a thread was like a lot of people tell me I want to be a barber because I want to be my own boss. But it's like that doesn't even apply. Like being your own boss is actually harder than
Yeah.
working for business. Like being
Yeah.
told the time you come to work is harder because there's nobody telling you what time to come to work. So when you become lazy, you don't make money. And like people don't understand. And I hate that stigma of when people say that. I jump all over them. Yo, no, bro, like you got to work harder than when you were working for.
I've actually been trying to work through this thought of being your own boss means eventually you got to be your own employee.
Yeah.
Meaning that you have to, when you work somewhere, you have a manager, you are only the employee. Your manager tells you what time to show up, what time you can leave, what to do when you arrive. But when you're your own boss, you have to not only set those parameters, you also got to be the employee under that does those things. So you're not only being your own boss, you're being your own employee. And so you go through those stages of, okay, for the first couple of months, I'm my own boss, making sure I'm getting up doing this. But then, and I talked about this with Kenny Duncan, where it's like when you learn a new system, it's fun in the moment because you're learning it and it's like a new thing. But
Yes.
then 2 years later, it becomes a little mundane. You start looking for the new thing if that's the kind of person you are. And so you got to learn to almost be an employee now. All right, let me do the mundane now because that's what's going to keep it going.
That's what I said on the thread. I said, if you can't be managed, you can't manage. So if
Yeah.
somebody can't be the manager won't be a manager. And like I tell people all the time is so you have your own shop, right? If you don't own it, you're not self-employed. You got to report to the landlord. And then if you own it, then who do you got to report to? You got to report to Uncle Sam. Accountability is so key, and people want to run from accountability, bro. I like when people tell me that I'm doing something wrong. I might not want to hear it, but deep down, like that's what mentors are for. Mentors, I'm accountable to mentors. I'm not my own boss. I'm not fucking self-made. Like people help me, people guide me because accountability is key to growth. And people don't get that, bro. People think that they're gonna do it on their own and blah blah. No, bro, I don't give a fuck. I heard a dude say that in the class this weekend was like, "Oh yeah, I'm self-taught." I go, "So how did you learn?" I watched a lot of YouTube. I go, "So YouTube didn't teach you?" No, it taught me like how the clipper in my hand taught me. I was like, "You're still learning. It's just another resource of learning." I was like, I never said I learned how to taught myself how to cut hair. Bro, I was watching the guys in high school the guy that I went back, I was watching him cut hair when I was 13 years old. So he had some kind of, he helped me in some kind of way because
Right.
that's where I started my career. That's why I wanted to cut hair was because my mom, it was old school. Like we go to the barber shop and I'd be there all day waiting for a haircut. And I would be
Yeah.
sitting and I wanted to watch them cut hair. That's what inspired me to cut hair. So if it wasn't for them, would I have ever been a barber? And
Exactly. Yeah. And talk to me about that. Like now you're at it's 2023. Now you're doing social media, and you are. How did you make that transition? Seemed like you were always doing social media. What's the difference between the social media you do today and the social media you were doing when you were a manager at the shop in the mid
oh,
2010s?
I think just now it's more value. Like I'm giving a lot of value out. And back then, that's what I tell people like in my classes. I think you were there. It was like back then it was just like a big flex. Look how good my work is. Look how nice my car is. Look how like it was more of a flex. And now it's a lot of entertainment and education. Like you have to provide value to people because that's what people are on social media for. And so one thing that stuck with me the most, I think it's Alex Ramosi said it. I don't know if he got it from somebody else, but is you have to give them the information, but sell them the curriculum. Give out the gems, sell the steps. And so that's what I do is I give you free gems, but it
Wait, what
doesn't
was that? Give out the gems, sell the stems,
yet sell the steps. You know what I mean?
sell the stems.
Yeah. So you got to give out the gem. And that's literally, you see it in all my comments is I'm always giving out gems. And one, I've never been a gatekeeper anyways. I've always
Right,
helped, I like to help people, but to the point to where now it can benefit me. Cool.
right,
Like I'm,
right.
and that's what it is. You give out the free information and then you, once it's time to, cause for instance, like I've never really watched YouTube on how to cut hair. I don't have the attention span to do that. And for me, I'm a more hands-on guy. And so I'm searching for the hands-on people and those people, they reach out and that's how those are my leads. My leads come from my content. And that's literally how that's honestly how I built my platform. And I didn't realize it till I talked to Tyreek one time and I think it was BarberCon. And he was like, yo, what's up with your free game Wednesday? You're not doing it no more. I was like, yeah, bro, it's a lot. And he's like, bro, I've been doing Tyreek Talk Tuesday for years. I'm like, yeah, I know.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
and it made me realize it later down the road was once we started doing that, the free game Wednesday, we were giving out free game, right? Is when people started reaching out for classes. And that's what built my platform. And I tell people that like if I didn't give out the information, they would have never known how good I was. No matter
Right,
how
right.
great haircut I posted on social media, it's just posting the haircut wasn't enough because people wanted to see, okay, he can cut good hair, but can he teach me something? And so we were teaching people on live every week, and it built my platform to where now I'm literally teaching you something every single day.
Yeah.
And it, and I was year one of that. I was booked. I did 50 some classes in a year two. I was like, okay, how do I do it again? And I remember I ran a special and I said, I'm going to raise my prices by the end of the year. If you book the classes now, I'll honor this year's prices. I did that and I literally got booked out for 6 months. And I was
Wow.
like, oh, and so I had 6 months to recruit the second half of this year and to where I've been able to do classes every single weekend consistently for over 2 years.
One more thing I want to touch on before you go, because I do like to get an hour. It's
You good?
55 minutes. So for the last couple minutes, I did want to touch a little bit on appointment booking.
Okay.
So what different apps or what would you recommend to a particular barber? Hey, I'm a barber right out of barber school. I want to go to a shop. Do I need online booking? Should I jump on something like a platform like Booksy because they can get me new customers? What
Yeah.
should I do if I'm a new barber coming out of barber school? What would you recommend as far as online booking?
Online booking, I used Booksy for a very long time, and I don't want to talk bad about Booksy, but one thing I learned about Booksy is they recycle a lot of your clients. And so once you build up your clientele, like it's good in the beginning because you can run the Booksy boost and they give you leads. But if you don't book with them for more than 3 months, they recycle them. So meaning if you were my client 3 months ago, they're gonna run a Booksy boost on somebody else's shop right across the street from you. And so for me, it was like a full circle of just recycling everybody else's clients. One, and then two, the only clients you're gaining are people that have actually used Booksy before. And so it didn't really make sense. Are you asking
What
like
was
what?
the problem with that? If they used Booksy before, what would be the problem with that?
No, I'm saying like if they're trying to get new clients, they're only limited to the clients. when you get your own apps. I know you got your own app. Like,
Yeah, stuff like that.
yeah, and I know Squire, they run through Google. And
Yeah,
Google ads,
exactly.
either they ain't going nowhere. So once you can get Google ads, Google is what? Is it still? I don't know if it is still, but last time I checked, it was the number one search engine in the world.
100%. Yeah, yeah.
So I want why
Nobody's dethroning Google.
yeah, why would I not want to
Well,
have
and just to touch on that, because even with Google, because I had a guy, I posted something about Booksy, and the guy says, "Yeah, I'd rather do Booksy Boost because the advertise like if I do my own app, then I gotta advertise it." And I just kept thinking like, but don't you gotta advertise anyway? What are you talking about? Because Booksy Boost is advertising, and you are paying for Booksy Boost, and advertising through Google means you're advertising your own brand and not within a app where there's other barbers. So that's where the confusion comes in. Like you're advertising. I feel like there's a disconnect where people are like, "I'm gonna get this thing, and now that I got it, I'm good. I'm go home, watch Netflix, and watch the clients roll in." And if no, even though you have it, you still have to market it. Because I know barbers that are on Booksy and don't get any clientele. Go figure. And they used to. The one guy said, "Oh, every Friday I used to do Fresh Kick Fridays on my Instagram.
yeah,
I would do that, post about it, see what my clients were wearing. People were coming with their J's and Yeezys and all that, and I would post it in my stories. And there was this big conversation online. And go figure, I was getting a lot of bookings on Booksy. I
yeah.
stopped doing that, and I don't get as much bookings anymore. And it's yeah, exactly. The
Not even
software's not going to do it for you.
yeah, not even just getting them, but also retaining them. And there was a lot of things. That's why I was real big on like interviews. Like I know a lot of shops you would just go in and they just have you start cutting the next day. No, bro, there's a whole process for me because I wanted to get to know you. One, but to me, like a real big red flag for barbers was when I'd ask them like, "Why did you leave the last shop?" Oh man, they was slow. I was like, so automatic red flag because now you're telling me that you're going to be relying on the business for business. And if they're at their seventh shop that they've worked at and they were slow, that means that not only were you using them for business, but you were taking their business, but you weren't retaining them. And so it's the same thing with books.
Mm.
Like you can get them in, but if you can't retain them and they're just making their ways full circle around all the Booksy users, is if you can't retain them, then it's really not even working for you. And I've never honestly been a fan, like as a barber for Phil, I've never really ran any paid ads. It was all organic reach. But the barbershop, I was in a different position because on a commission scale, if they don't make money, I don't make money. And so I did started running Booksy Boos and Google ads and
Mm-hmm.
Yelps. But as a barber, as myself, I never ran ads because I was pumping out so much content that I didn't need to. At one point, I was getting like 4 or 5 clients a month just off of posting on Instagram and retain. And that's how I was able to scale and raise my prices so much. I was raising my prices like every 6 months because I was just staying booked all the time. I'd raise, lose a couple, gain them back. And if you're not advertising, you're losing, bro.